The USS Discovery's bridge erupted in chaos as every sensor array screamed warnings simultaneously. Lieutenant Commander Detmer's hands flew across her console, trying to make sense of readings that defied every principle of known physics. "Captain Lorca, we have a massive subspace rupture directly ahead. Energy signatures are off every scale we have." Captain Gabriel Lorca rose from his command chair, his weathered face illuminated by the crimson glow of alert status. 2 years into a brutal war with the Klingon Empire had taught him to expect the unexpected, but the maelstrom forming on the viewscreen was beyond anything in Starfleet's databases. Space itself was tearing open, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. "Shields to maximum! All hands brace for—" The rupture exploded outward in a cascade of reality-shredding energy, and through it stepped a figure that would haunt Federation records for generations to come. He was massive, easily over 2 meters tall, with purple skin lined with the scars of countless battles. But it wasn't his physical presence that made Commander Saru's threat ganglia instinctively extend. It was the golden gauntlet on his left hand, studded with 6 gems that pulsed with impossible light. Each stone radiated energy signatures that Starfleet sensors categorized as unknown, physics violation across the board. The figure, Thanos of Titan, though they didn't yet know his name, floated in the void of space without protection, surveying his new surroundings with the calm assessment of a being who had transcended such mortal concerns. Behind him, the dimensional tear sealed itself with a thunderclap of collapsing subspace that sent the Discovery tumbling. "Status report," Lorca barked, gripping his chair as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. "Hull integrity at 93%, Lieutenant Commander Ariam reported, her cybernetic enhancements processing data streams faster than organic crew could follow. But Captain, that being, he's surviving in hard vacuum, no suit, no discernible life support technology. And the energy emanating from that gauntlet, it's rewriting quantum probability fields in a 3-kilometer radius." On the viewscreen, Thanos raised his gauntleted hand, the space stone flared blue, and he simply appeared on the Discovery's bridge in a flash of azure light that bypassed shields, bulkheads, and every security protocol Starfleet had ever devised. Phaser rifles snapped up instantly. Security officers surrounded the intruder, their weapons trained on center mass, but Thanos didn't even acknowledge them. His eyes, ancient, weary, yet burning with terrible purpose, fixed on Captain Lorca. "I am Thanos of Titan, and I appear to be far from home." The Mind Stone flickered yellow, and suddenly every mind on the bridge was touched by his consciousness, not invading, not controlling, but offering. In that instant they saw a universe consumed by overpopulation, resource depletion, civilizations collapsing under their own success. They felt his conviction, his terrible mercy, his willingness to bear any burden to restore balance. They understood his completed mission, the snap that had culled half of all life in his reality. Lieutenant Paul Stamets, the Discovery's astromycologist and genius behind their revolutionary spore drive, staggered against his console. That's impossible. You killed half of everyone? Randomly? That's not balance, that's genocide." "Is it?" Thanos' gaze shifted to Stamets with something almost resembling respect for the challenge. "In my universe, resources are finite. Life unchecked becomes a plague that consumes itself. I had the will to do what needed doing, what no one else could." "We're Starfleet," Lorca said, his hand hovering near his phaser but not drawing. This being could have killed them all already if that was his intent. "The United Federation of Planets, and in this universe, we've evolved past such barbaric calculus. We explore, we seek peaceful coexistence, You are at war," Thanos interrupted, gesturing at the red alert lights still bathing the bridge. "I can sense the conflict burning through this sector. Your Federation fights for survival against an empire that respects only strength. Do not lecture me about peace while your ships burn and your colonies fall." The uncomfortable truth of it silenced the bridge. Commander Michael Burnham, who had started this war through her own desperate choice at the Battle of the Binary Stars, felt the weight of those words like a physical blow. Detecting massive distortion in the Gauntlet's energy matrix, Ariam reported, breaking the tension. "Captain, those stones, they're not stable in our universe. The quantum resonance is decaying. At current rates, they'll reach critical cascade in 72 hours. Thanos looked at his gauntlet, and for the first time, something like concern crossed his faces. The stones flickered erratically, the reality stone's crimson glow wavering, the time stone's emerald light stuttering. He clenched his fist, and reality rippled around him as he attempted to compensate. A nearby console briefly transformed into crystalline lattice before snapping back to normal. "This universe operates on different fundamental laws," he said, more to himself than to the crew. "The stones are infinite in my reality, but here," he looked up at Lorca, "I require time to understand this place, to adapt. And you require someone who understands impossible choices." "We don't need," Lorca began. The ship shuddered as weapons fire raked across their shields. A Klingon bird of prey decloaked off the port bow, followed by two more. The warships had detected the subspace distortion and come to investigate, or more likely, to kill. "Klingon attack wing," Lieutenant Detmer reported. "They're charging weapons." Thanos turned to the view screen, studying the aggressive vessels with tactical assessment honed across 1,000 campaigns. "Warriors. I can respect that. But they lack vision." The Power Stone flared violet, and he gestured almost casually. The lead bird of prey simply stopped, held in place by energy that made its shields look like tissue paper. The other two vessels broke formation, circling like predators suddenly uncertain of their prey. "Stand down," Lorca commanded, though whether he was addressing his crew or Thanos was unclear. "We are not executioners." "No," Thanos agreed, releasing the Klingon ship undamaged. "Which is why you're losing." He looked back at the captain with eyes that had watched worlds die. "But perhaps I can learn from your idealism. And perhaps you can learn from my pragmatism, because I sense something darker approaching this galaxy than mere territorial war." In the science station, Stamets was frantically analyzing the residual energy from Thanos' display of power. What he found made his blood run cold. "Captain, the Gauntlet's instability. If those stones cascade in our universe, the quantum detonation would make a supernova look like a candle. We're talking sector-wide destruction." Thanos nodded slowly. "Then we have a shared interest in preventing that outcome. As I said, balance, even here." Captain Lorca looked at this being who casually wielded power beyond comprehension, who spoke of genocide as mercy, who had literally snapped half the universe away and felt justified in doing so. Every Starfleet instinct screamed to contain this threat, but they were at war, desperate, and this Thanos, this mad titan from another reality, represented a variable that could change everything. "Commander Burnham, escort our guest to the observation deck, full security detail, and get Admiral Cornwell on subspace immediately. Stamets, I want you and Lieutenant Tilly analyzing those energy signatures. If those stones are going to explode, I want to know how to stop it." As security officers cautiously surrounded Thanos, a gesture he permitted with almost paternal patience, he paused at the turbolift. "You call me guest, but you suspect I am something else. Monster, perhaps. Tyrant. In my universe, they called me many things, but I was always necessary." His gauntlet flickered again, and for just a moment, the entire bridge saw another reality superimposed over their own. A thriving planet, happy populations, sustainable civilization. Then it vanished. I showed them what was possible when someone had the will to do what must be done. "We'll see," Lorca said quietly as the turbolift doors closed. "In this universe, we believe there's always another way." Alone in his ready room minutes later, Lorca pulled up the sensor logs of Thanos' arrival. The energy signatures were unlike anything in Federation databases, except for one chilling similarity. They matched, in structure if not scale, the readings they had detected from Section 31's classified experiments with parallel universe technology. Someone, somewhere, was going to want this being and his weapon very badly. And in the depths of space, on a monitoring station that officially didn't exist, a Section 31 agent watched the footage with calculating eyes. The war with the Klingons was going badly. The Federation needed an edge. And this Thanos, with his power and his ruthless philosophy, might just be the weapon they needed, if they could control him. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below, to boldly go where no one has gone before. The game, as they say, was afoot. Thanos of Titan had arrived in a universe governed by different rules, fighting a different kind of war, and the question hanging over the USS Discovery like a sword of Damocles was simple but profound. In a conflict that threatened everything the Federation stood for, how far would they go to survive? And would Thanos' terrible calculus begin to make a kind of sense? Balance was coming. The only question was, at what cost? The observation deck of the USS Discovery offered a panoramic view of the stars, but Thanos stood before the transparent aluminum viewport studying something far more troubling, his own reflection overlaid against the infinite darkness. The Infinity Gauntlet pulsed erratically on his left hand, each stone flickering like a dying star. The Power Stone would flare violet, then dim. The Reality Stone's crimson glow stuttered and sparked. This universe rejected them, or perhaps they rejected this universe. The distinction hardly mattered if the result was catastrophic failure. Commander Michael Burnham watched from the entrance, flanked by two security officers whose phasers would be utterly useless against a being who could manipulate fundamental forces. She had volunteered for this assignment, much to Captain Lorca's barely concealed skepticism. But Burnham had started this war through her own impossible choice at the binary stars, and she understood better than most what it meant to bear the weight of decisions that killed thousands to potentially save millions. "The Vulcans have a philosophy," she said, stepping into the room. "Infinite diversity in infinite combinations. IDIC. The belief that strength comes from the diversity of life, not its reduction." Thanos turned, and his ancient eyes held something resembling curiosity. "I know of the Vulcans, while studying your vessel's database during my transport from the bridge. A logical species that suppresses emotion to achieve reason. Yet even they cannot escape the fundamental mathematics of existence." He gestured at the stars beyond. How many civilizations burn themselves out reaching for those lights? How many worlds collapse under the weight of their own success? Your Vulcans nearly destroyed themselves in nuclear fire before embracing logic. They learned through catastrophe. I simply sought to prevent the catastrophe. "By becoming one yourself?" Burnham countered. She moved to a terminal, pulling up star charts of the Federation-Klingon War. Red markers indicated destroyed colonies, ships lost, entire populations slaughtered. "We are fighting a war we didn't want. The Klingons united under T'Kuvma, a warrior who preached purity and the extermination of our corrupting influence. Your philosophy and his aren't so different. Both believe in reduction, in purging what you deem excessive or contaminating." The comparison struck deeper than a phaser blast. Thanos' jaw tightened, the only sign that her words had found their mark. "T'Kuvma seeks supremacy through genocide. I sought balance through mercy. The difference is everything." "Is it?" Burnham pulled up footage from a colony world, Doctari Alpha, population 12,000, now a graveyard of orbital bombardment. "Tell that to the families who died here. Tell them about mercy." Before Thanos could respond, the ship shuddered. Red alert klaxons wailed, as Lieutenant Detmer's voice crackled over the comm system. "All hands to battle stations. Klingon fleet emerging from warp. 7 D7 cruisers and a flagship. They're hailing us, Captain."
"Put it through," Lorca's voice commanded. The view screen in the observation deck activated, showing a Klingon bridge wreathed in red light and shadow. At its center stood a figure that radiated predatory authority, General Cole, the ruthless warrior who had seized control of the legendary Ship of the Dead after Tekuvma's fall. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto the camera feed. You are no Starfleet weakling. I see a warrior, a killer of worlds." The Klingon's eyes fixed on the Infinity Gauntlet, and something like hunger twisted his features. That weapon, I felt its power across space itself. With such a tool, the Empire would be unstoppable. Kronos would reign supreme across all realities. Your Empire seeks conquest. I sought correction. We are not alike. Are we not? He gestured at his own bridge crew, warriors who had earned their positions through blood and battle. You speak of necessary culling. This is the way of the warrior. The strong survive, the weak perish. You understand this truth, while the Federation clings to their delusion that all life is precious. He spat the last words like a curse. Join us, Titan. Help us purge this galaxy of those too weak to deserve life. Together, we will bring true balance, the balance of Klingon supremacy. The Mind Stone flickered yellow as Thanos examined Cole's thoughts. What he found there made even his battle-hardened expression darken with contempt. You don't seek balance. You seek dominance fueled by ego and hunger for glory. Your culling would continue until only Klingons remained, and then you would turn on each other. He raised the gauntlet, and every stone flared simultaneously despite their instability. I am many things, tyrant, destroyer, but I am not a tool for petty empires. Cole's face twisted with rage. Then you will die with the Federation cowards. Kapla. The transmission cut as Klingon disruptor fire hammered into Discovery's shields. The ship bucked and rolled as Captain Lorca initiated evasive maneuvers, his voice cutting through the chaos with practiced calm. Stamets, we need the spore drive operational now. We can't fight 7 D7 cruisers.
In the engineering bay, Paul Stamets was already interfacing with the organic mycelial network that powered Discovery's revolutionary faster-than-light technology. Lieutenant Sylvia Tilly worked frantically beside him, rerouting power from non-essential systems. The network's responding, but there's interference. Those Infinity Stones are creating subspace distortions that the mycelial plane is reacting to. It's like they're poisoning the network. Thanos heard this through the open comm channels, and understanding crystallized in his tactical mind. His presence, his power, was compromising their only advantage. The Reality Stone pulsed, showing him probability threads, timelines where the Discovery died here, where the Federation lost a critical asset, where this war's balance tipped irreversibly toward Klingon victory. "I am your liability," he said to Burnham. "My gauntlet's instability threatens your ship's systems." "Then help us," Burnham urged. "You say you seek balance. Prove it, not through genocide, but through protection." For a long moment, Thanos stood at the crossroads of philosophy and pragmatism. Then he moved, crossing the observation deck with surprising speed for his massive frame. "Take me to your engineering bay. If my presence disrupts your network, perhaps I can also stabilize it." They ran through corridors alive with emergency lighting, while the Discovery shook under sustained Klingon assault. Crew members rushed past them, some injured, all determined. Thanos observed them with clinical interest. No panic, no chaos, merely trained professionals executing their duties despite fear. It reminded him of his own Black Order, his children of conquest. Perhaps these Federation idealists possessed more steel than he'd credited. The engineering bay was a cathedral of pulsing bioluminescent technology. The mycelial network's interface chamber glowed with otherworldly light, and at its center stood the cultivation bay, where the tardigrade creature, Ripper as the crew called it, had once powered their jumps. Now Stamets himself served as navigator, his body infused with tardigrade DNA, allowing him to interface directly with the network. "You're using a biological system for faster-than-light travel," Thanos observed immediately, grasping the elegant simplicity. "Spores, a fungal network connecting all space simultaneously. Brilliant and terrifying." "And it's dying," Tilly shouted over the sound of another weapon's impact. "Your Gauntlet's energy signature is like acid to the mycelial plane. Every time those stones pulse, the network convulses." Thanos examined the cultivation chamber through the lens of the Reality Stone, seeing the quantum threads that connected Discovery to the infinite mycelial forest. The Infinity Stones were indeed poisoning it. His stones operated on the fundamental constants of another universe, and their very existence here was a reality violation that the delicate biological network found intolerable. "I can contain the interference," he said, "but you must trust me." "Trust?" Stamets laughed bitterly, his eyes still glowing from his connection to the spore drive. "You murdered trillions." "I saved trillions more," Thanos corrected. Then softer, "I made the choice no one else would make, and I live with that burden every moment. Your network, this beautiful, fragile thing, I will not let my presence destroy it." The time stone flared green, and Thanos extended his consciousness into temporal probability. He saw the immediate future, the Discovery's shields failing in 43 seconds, Klingon boarding parties breaching the hull, Stamets dying at his console as disruptor fire ripped through engineering. He saw the ship captured, the spore drive technology falling into Klingon hands, the war turning catastrophically. "Now," he commanded, "initiate your jump. I will shield the network." Lorca's voice crackled over comms. "Stamets, we're out of time. Shields at 18%. Paul Stamets looked at Burnham, who nodded once. The scientist stepped into the cultivation chamber, his hands interfacing with the organic controls. The network activated, and the ship began to resonate with that peculiar frequency that preceded a spore jump. Thanos raised his infinity gauntlet, all 6 stones blazing despite their instability. The Power Stone provided raw energy. The Space Stone mapped our destination. The Reality Stone wove a protective barrier between the stone's physics-violating presence and the mycelial plane's delicate quantum structure. The Mind Stone kept his concentration absolute. The Soul Stone anchored his will, and the Time Stone extended this moment, giving them the seconds they needed. The strain was immense. In his own universe, wielding the complete gauntlet made him the most powerful being in existence. Here, in this reality with different fundamental laws, it took everything he had just to perform this basic function. Purple blood trickled from his nose. The gauntlet burned against his skin, but he held. Discovery jumped. The ship phased out of normal space and entered the mycelial network, that impossible forest of infinite connections that underlay reality itself. For Thanos, seeing it was revelation. This was like the Soul Stone's domain magnified across all existence. Every point connected to every other point. Life and space unified in perfect mathematical harmony. "Magnificent," he whispered, even as the effort of maintaining his protective barrier made his knees threaten to buckle. Then they emerged, light years away from the Klingon fleet, safe in a quiet sector near the Federation core worlds. Stamets collapsed, unconscious from the strain. Tilly rushed to stabilize him while medical teams were summoned. The red alert klaxons finally silenced. Thanos lowered his arm, the gauntlet smoking and scarred. The Reality Stone had cracked, just slightly, a hairline fracture that pulsed with dangerous instability. He had saved them, but at cost to his already compromised power. Commander Burnham approached him cautiously. "You helped us. Why?" "Because your scientist was correct," Thanos said, examining his damaged gauntlet with something approaching regret. "I murdered trillions. In my universe, I believe it was necessary, but here, perhaps there are other ways." He looked at her with eyes that had seen galaxies burn. "Your Federation fights for diversity, for coexistence. It's foolish, idealistic, mathematically unsustainable,
And yet, he gestured at the crew working together, multiple species unified in purpose. You survive. You endure. Perhaps I have something to learn. But before Burnham could respond, a new voice echoed through the engineering bay, not through speakers, but seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Oh, how delicious! The Mad Titan playing hero. This I simply must see up close. Reality twisted, and suddenly there he was, Q, dressed in a Starfleet captain's uniform that was somehow both perfect regulation and deeply mocking. The omnipotent being circled Thanos like a predator sizing up prey, his eyes gleaming with dangerous curiosity. Another being who thinks he can remake reality according to his vision. Tell me, Thanos of Titan, what happens when your mathematics meet my omnipotence? When your stones meet an entity that existed before stones, before reality itself? Thanos raised the Infinity Gauntlet instinctively, all 6 stones blazing despite their instability. Q merely smiled. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Q snapped his fingers, and the entire engineering bay transformed. One moment they stood surrounded by the pulsing bioluminescence of Discovery's revolutionary technology. The next, they occupied an impossible space that hurt to perceive. The crew, the ship, everything vanished, replaced by a vast chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Geometric patterns that defied Euclidean logic spiraled across walls that were sometimes solid, sometimes transparent, sometimes both at once. Thanos, Commander Burnham, and Captain Lorca, who had been en route to engineering, found themselves standing on a platform suspended over infinite darkness, or perhaps infinite light. The distinction became meaningless in Q's domain. "Welcome to my courtroom," Q announced, his Starfleet uniform shifting to judicial robes with a theatrical flourish. "The Continuum has taken an interest in you, Titan. A being from another reality, wielding power that shouldn't exist in ours, using it to save a Federation vessel? How delightfully paradoxical." Thanos assessed his situation with the tactical mind that had conquered 1,000 worlds. His gauntlet burned with power, each stone responding to his will despite their instability. But he sensed something in this Q that transcended the stone's authority, a being whose existence predated the fundamental forces his gems controlled. "You're a god," Thanos stated. "Not a question, an observation." "God is such a limited term. I'm simply beyond. Beyond your stones, beyond your understanding, beyond the petty mathematics you use to justify butchering half your universe." He leaned forward, and suddenly his casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by something ancient and terrible. "But I'm curious, Thanos. You claim to seek balance. Let me show you what your balance looks like from a higher perspective." Q waved his hand, and the darkness below them ignited with vision. Burnham gasped. Lorca's hand instinctively went to his phaser, still useless here. They were watching Thanos' universe, viewing the aftermath of the snap with omniscient clarity. Planets in chaos, civilizations fragmenting as half their populations dissolved to ash, but also, and this was what made it unbearable, worlds recovering. Resources suddenly abundant, environmental collapse reversed. Species that were suffocating under overpopulation finding room to breathe, to grow, to thrive. "So you see," Thanos said quietly, watching his life's work play out like a historical record. "I gave them a chance. The survivors inherited paradise." "Did they?" Q's voice dripped with mockery. He gestured again, and the vision fast-forwarded. Civilizations recovering, yes, but also learning to fear, to hate, to never trust that their existence was secure. Children growing up traumatized,
Societies developing protocols for random, sudden death. The psychological wound that would never heal. You didn't create balance, you fool. You created eternal fear. And worse, you taught countless beings that genocide can be mercy if you simply believe hard enough in your own righteousness. Thanos' jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. Better to live in fear than not to live at all. I saved half of everything. By murdering the other half, Burnham interjected, her voice shaking with controlled fury. You want to see real balance, real survival without genocide? Show him the Federation. Show him what we've built without culling our population. Q's eyes gleamed with interest. Oh, the human speaks with fire. Very well, Commander. Let's see if your precious Federation's idealism holds up under scrutiny. The vision shifted to Earth, pristine, thriving, with orbital habitats and a planet that had healed from centuries of environmental damage. Then to Vulcan, with its proud civilization that had transformed violent passion into logical excellence through choice, not through Thanos' brutal reduction. To Andoria, Tellar, Betazad, dozens of species, billions of beings living in cooperative abundance. No scarcity, Q narrated. Replicator technology solved your resource limitations. You evolved socially, learned to cooperate. Your solution was enlightenment, not extermination. He turned to Thanos. Why couldn't your civilizations learn that? Because they ran out of time, Thanos replied, his voice heavy with conviction. You show me the Federation's success, but ignore the countless species that died before reaching this enlightenment. The Vulcans nearly destroyed themselves before finding logic. How many worlds never get that chance? How many burn through their resources in the crucial years before developing the technology to save themselves? So you appointed yourself executioner, Lorcan said, speaking for the first time. The captain's tactical mind was working overtime, analyzing this being who casually discussed species-wide genocide as resource management. You decided who lives and who dies based on your calculations. Someone had to, Thanos said simply. Q laughed, a sound like breaking glass and distant thunder. Someone had to? That's always the tyrant's justification. Someone had to make the hard choices. Someone had to bear the burden. Someone had to play God. He materialized a throne and lounged in it, still wearing those judicial robes. But here's the question that brought you to my attention, Titan. What happens when your mathematics meet a universe that doesn't operate by your rules? With a gesture, Q brought them back to normal space, but not to discovery. Instead, they materialized on a planet's surface, verdant, beautiful, with a pre-industrial civilization visible in the distance. Primitive structures dotted a landscape that showed no signs of ecological collapse or overpopulation. This is Corvan 2, Burnham said, recognizing the planet from her xenoanthropology studies. Pre-warp civilization, about 2,000 inhabitants total. They're under prime directive protection. We observe, but do not interfere. How quaint! Non-interference, the Federation's most sacred law. He turned to Thanos. But here's your test, Titan. I'm giving you a choice, a real one, not the false dilemma you presented your own universe. The sky above Corvan II began to darken, not with natural clouds, but with the approach of something massive. A Klingon warship decloaked in low orbit, the Ship of the Dead, General Cole's flagship. Its weapons began charging, targeting the population centers below. Cole tracked us through the spore jump signature, Lorca realized with horror. He's going to sterilize the planet to draw us out. Q nodded.
Indeed, he knows you're here somewhere, though my powers have hidden you for the moment. In approximately 4 minutes, he will bombard this innocent world, killing every single inhabitant. Not for resources, not for territory, simply to prove that the Federation cannot protect those under its care. He looked at Thanos. Here's your dilemma. You have the power to stop it. One gesture with your gauntlet and you could disintegrate that ship, save 2,000 lives. But, he held up a finger, by doing so, you interfere with a pre-warp civilization. You reveal to them that gods exist, that reality can be casually manipulated. You contaminate their natural development forever. The Prime Directive, Burnham whispered. If we intervene, even to save them, we violate everything we stand for. Precisely, Q clapped his hands. So, Titan, you who killed trillions to save trillions, what do you do when the math is only 2,000? When the cost of saving them is their cultural integrity, their right to develop naturally? Do you let them die to preserve some abstract principle, or do you play God one more time? Thanos stared at the sky, at the weapons charging, at the innocent civilization below that had no idea death approached. His gauntlet pulsed with barely contained power. The Reality Stone could rewrite the very fabric of this moment. The Time Stone could reverse whatever happened. The Power Stone could atomize that ship before it fired a single shot. "This is a trap," he said quietly. "You're testing me." "I'm testing all of you," Q corrected. "The Federation and its precious principles, the Mad Titan and his utilitarian calculus. Let's see which philosophy bends first when innocent lives hang in the balance." Lorca pulled out his communicator, trying to raise discovery. Nothing. Q's interference prevented any outside help. They were alone with this choice. "We have to stop him," Burnham said immediately. "Prime Directive or not, we can't let genocide happen when we have the power to prevent it." "Can't we?" Lorca's voice was cold, calculating. "Commander, the Prime Directive exists for a reason. If we reveal advanced technology to every pre-warp civilization, we become exactly what Thanos is. Gods deciding who lives and who dies based on our judgment." "Then let them die?" Burnham's voice rose. 2,000 people, Captain. Families, children, an entire culture. If we save them and they develop religion around us, if we fundamentally alter their sociological development, how many billions might die in the wars that follow when they finally reach the stars, expecting gods to save them from every crisis? Thanos listened to them argue, recognizing the fundamental tension at the heart of Federation philosophy. They preached infinite diversity and the value of all life, yet their most sacred law required standing aside while species died. It was, he realized, a form of his own calculus. Sacrifice the few to preserve the integrity of the many. "You understand now," he said, interrupting their debate. "Your Prime Directive is utilitarian logic dressed in ethical clothing. You've simply chosen a different variable to optimize." "It's not the same," Burnham insisted. "We respect self-determination. We don't choose who lives and dies." "Don't you?" Thanos gestured at the sky. "Right now, you're choosing. Every second you debate is a choice to let them die. The only difference between us is that I have the courage to acknowledge my choices." Above them, the ship of the dead's weapons reached full charge.
General Cole's voice boomed across the planet, transmitted through atmospheric disturbance. "Federation cowards, I know you hide on this world. Show yourselves, or these primitives die for your weakness." 2 minutes remaining. Thanos raised his gauntlet. The stones blazed. Reality, power, space, all responding to his will despite their instability. He could see the solution so clearly. One gesture and the Klingon ship would cease to exist. 2,000 lives saved. Simple mathematics. But he hesitated. In his universe, he had never hesitated. The snap had been executed without doubt, without remorse, because he knew with absolute certainty that it was necessary. But here in this universe, with its different rules, its different philosophies, doubt had found him. "The Mad Titan hesitates," Q crowed with delight. "Character development, how touching." "Shut up," Thanos growled. He looked at Burnham. "In your studies of pre-warp civilizations, have any ever survived first contact with violence they couldn't understand?" "Some, with extensive rehabilitation, counseling, sociological support." "And without that support?" She hesitated. "Cargo cults, religious warfare, cultural collapse. The trauma often destroys them more thoroughly than physical weapons could." 1 minute.
The USS Discovery's bridge erupted in chaos as every sensor array screamed warnings simultaneously. Lieutenant Commander Detmer's hands flew across her console, trying to make sense of readings that defied every principle of known physics. "Captain Lorca, we have a massive subspace rupture directly ahead. Energy signatures are off every scale we have." Captain Gabriel Lorca rose from his command chair, his weathered face illuminated by the crimson glow of alert status. 2 years into a brutal war with the Klingon Empire had taught him to expect the unexpected, but the maelstrom forming on the viewscreen was beyond anything in Starfleet's databases. Space itself was tearing open, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. "Shields to maximum! All hands brace for—" The rupture exploded outward in a cascade of reality-shredding energy, and through it stepped a figure that would haunt Federation records for generations to come. He was massive, easily over 2 meters tall, with purple skin lined with the scars of countless battles. But it wasn't his physical presence that made Commander Saru's threat ganglia instinctively extend. It was the golden gauntlet on his left hand, studded with 6 gems that pulsed with impossible light. Each stone radiated energy signatures that Starfleet sensors categorized as unknown, physics violation across the board. The figure, Thanos of Titan, though they didn't yet know his name, floated in the void of space without protection, surveying his new surroundings with the calm assessment of a being who had transcended such mortal concerns. Behind him, the dimensional tear sealed itself with a thunderclap of collapsing subspace that sent the Discovery tumbling. "Status report," Lorca barked, gripping his chair as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. "Hull integrity at 93%, Lieutenant Commander Ariam reported, her cybernetic enhancements processing data streams faster than organic crew could follow. But Captain, that being, he's surviving in hard vacuum, no suit, no discernible life support technology. And the energy emanating from that gauntlet, it's rewriting quantum probability fields in a 3-kilometer radius." On the viewscreen, Thanos raised his gauntleted hand, the space stone flared blue, and he simply appeared on the Discovery's bridge in a flash of azure light that bypassed shields, bulkheads, and every security protocol Starfleet had ever devised. Phaser rifles snapped up instantly. Security officers surrounded the intruder, their weapons trained on center mass, but Thanos didn't even acknowledge them. His eyes, ancient, weary, yet burning with terrible purpose, fixed on Captain Lorca. "I am Thanos of Titan, and I appeared to be far from home." The Mind Stone flickered yellow, and suddenly every mind on the bridge was touched by his consciousness, not invading, not controlling, but offering. In that instant, they saw a universe consumed by overpopulation, resource depletion, civilizations collapsing under their own success. They felt his conviction, his terrible mercy, his willingness to bear any burden to restore balance. They understood his completed mission, the snap that had culled half of all life in his reality. Lieutenant Paul Stamets, the Discovery's astromycologist and genius behind their revolutionary spore drive, staggered against his console. That's impossible. You killed half of everyone? Randomly? That's not balance, that's genocide. Is it? Thanos' gaze shifted to Stamets with something almost resembling respect for the challenge. In my universe, resources are finite. Life unchecked becomes a plague that consumes itself. I had the will to do what needed doing, what no one else could. We're Starfleet, Lorca said, his hand hovering near his phaser but not drawing. This being could have killed them all already if that was his intent. The United Federation of Planets, and in this universe, we've evolved past such barbaric calculus. We explore, we seek peaceful coexistence, You are at war, Thanos interrupted, gesturing at the red alert lights still bathing the bridge. I can sense the conflict burning through this sector. Your Federation fights for survival against an empire that respects only strength. Do not lecture me about peace while your ships burn and your colonies fall. The uncomfortable truth of it silenced the bridge. Commander Michael Burnham, who had started this war through her own desperate choice at the Battle of the Binary Stars, felt the weight of those words like a physical blow. Detecting massive distortion in the Gauntlet's energy matrix, Ariam reported, breaking the tension. Captain, those stones, they're not stable in our universe. The quantum resonance is decaying. At current rates, they'll reach critical cascade in 72 hours. Thanos looked at his gauntlet, and for the first time, something like concern crossed his faces. The stones flickered erratically, the reality stone's crimson glow wavering, the time stone's emerald light stuttering. He clenched his fist and reality rippled around him as he attempted to compensate. A nearby console briefly transformed into crystalline lattice before snapping back to normal.
The comm system crackled with a voice that carried the cold precision of someone accustomed to operating outside regulations. USS Discovery, this is Section 31 Operative Leland. You are harboring an entity classified as a clear and present danger to Federation security. Surrender the being known as Thanos and his weapon immediately, or we will take him by force. Captain Lorca stood on Discovery's bridge, his weathered features illuminated by the tactical display showing 7 black vessels in perfect attack formation. He'd dealt with Section 31 before, had even cooperated with them when circumstances demanded. But something about this felt different, more desperate, more dangerous. Operative Leland, Lorca replied, his voice carefully neutral. We're still assessing the situation. The entity in question may represent a first contact scenario requiring diplomatic. We're past diplomacy, Captain. Leland's face appeared on the view screen, clean-cut, professional, with eyes that had witnessed things that would never appear in official reports. Our intelligence indicates that being possesses reality-warping capabilities that make Omega particles look like children's toys. The Klingons already want him. The Romulans have undoubtedly detected the subspace distortions. If we don't secure that weapon, it will fall into hostile hands and the Federation will face extinction-level threats. In the observation deck, Thanos listened to this exchange with grim recognition. He had encountered such operatives in his own universe: S.H.I.E.L.D., the Illuminati, various intelligence agencies that believed themselves capable of controlling forces beyond their understanding. They always made the same mistake, assuming power could be contained through strategy rather than will. Commander Burnham stood beside him, her hand resting near her phaser out of habit rather than genuine belief it would matter. Section 31 operates in the shadows. They do what Starfleet officially cannot: sabotage, assassination, biological warfare.
They claim it's to protect the Federation, but they've crossed lines that should never be crossed. They are what you fear becoming, Thanos observed. An organization that has embraced my utilitarian calculus without my restraint. Dangerous. You murdered half the universe, Burnham said sharply. Don't pretend you're better than them. I'm not better, Thanos corrected. I'm simply more honest about what I am. He turned from the viewport, his massive frame casting shadows across the deck. These operatives, they believe they can use the Infinity Gauntlet as a weapon. They cannot comprehend what it would cost them. On the bridge, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Leland's image leaned forward, all pretense of negotiation abandoned. Captain Lorca, I'm authorized to inform you that Discovery has been compromised by a hostile entity. Under Section 31 protocols, we are empowered to neutralize that threat by any means necessary. You have 60 seconds to transport Thanos to our vessel, or we will board you. Lieutenant Detmer's hands flew across her console. Captain, they're charging weapons, all 7 ships, targeting our shields and propulsion. They want to disable us, not destroy us. They're not bluffing, Commander Saru observed. Their tactical formation is designed for rapid boarding operations. Lorca's jaw tightened. He could fight. Discovery had surprised more dangerous adversaries, but Section 31 vessels were equipped with experimental technology that officially didn't exist, and their crews were veterans of black operations who wouldn't hesitate to kill Starfleet personnel if necessary. More importantly, fighting them would make Lorca and his crew traitors, and the Federation couldn't afford internal conflict during a war with the Klingons. 30 seconds, Captain, Leland warned. Thanos made the decision for them. He strode onto the bridge, the Infinity Gauntlet pulsing with barely controlled power despite its damaged state. Every officer instinctively tensed, hands moving toward weapons before discipline reasserted itself. I will not be secured like some primitive artifact, Thanos announced, his voice carrying absolute authority. If you wish to face me, Operative Leland, then face me directly. But know this, I have toppled empires, I have shattered armies, I have made gods kneel. Your black ships and your secret protocols mean nothing to me. On the view screen, Leland's expression remained carefully neutral, but Thanos saw the calculation in those cold eyes. The operative was reassessing, weighing risks, trying to determine if this being could be manipulated or force was the only option. You misunderstand, Leland said smoothly. We don't want you as a prisoner, Thanos. We want you as an asset. The Federation is losing this war. Every week, more colonies burn, more ships are destroyed, more lives are lost. You possess power that could end this conflict in days. Help us achieve victory, and you'll have the Federation's gratitude and resources to repair your gauntlet, perhaps even find a way home. It was a good offer, logical, pragmatic, exactly the kind of utilitarian bargain Thanos would have accepted in his own universe. Use overwhelming force to end conflict quickly, minimizing total casualties through decisive action. But something had changed in him since arriving in this reality. Q's test on Korvan 2 had awakened doubt, had shown him the complexity his simple mathematics had ignored. The Federation crew around him, flawed, idealistic, struggling to maintain principles even in war, represented something he'd never allowed himself to consider, that perhaps some equations shouldn't be solved through raw power. You offer me the chance to become your weapon, to use the Infinity Gauntlet to crush your enemies and call it victory. I've walked that path, Operative. It leads to ashes and regret. Then you condemn millions to death by your inaction. The Klingons will continue their genocide. Colonies will burn. Families will be slaughtered. All because you're too proud to...
Too proud? Thanos' voice dropped to a dangerous rumble.
I snapped away half of all life in my universe because I believed it necessary. Pride has nothing to do with my refusal. I deny you because I recognize what you represent, the certainty that the ends justify any means. That path led me to commit the greatest atrocity in history. I will not enable another to follow it. The bridge fell silent. Even Leland seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Then his expression hardened, professional mask reasserting itself. Then you leave us no choice. All vessels, boarding action authorization Alpha. Reality twisted. Q appeared between Thanos and the view screen, now dressed in a Section 31 uniform that was somehow even more theatrical than his Starfleet captain's attire. Oh, I simply cannot allow you boring military types to ruin this educational experience. Do you have any idea how rare it is to witness genuine character development? The Mad Titan learning restraint? It's like watching a supernova decide to become a pleasant summer breeze. Q, Lorca groaned. Not now. Always now, dear Captain. Timing is everything. Q snapped his fingers, and the entire bridge, crew, Thanos, Burnham, even the consoles vanished, reappearing in that impossible space between dimensions where Q conducted his trials. The Section 31 fleet remained frozen outside, caught in a temporal bubble. "What is this?" Thanos demanded, the gauntlet flaring defensively. "This is your final exam," Q announced, circling the Mad Titan with predatory amusement. "You've learned mercy, you've learned restraint, but have you learned wisdom? Because Section 31, despite their moral bankruptcy, raises a valid point. Your inaction has consequences. By refusing to use your power to end the Klingon War, you allow suffering to continue. The Federation's idealism costs lives every day." He waved his hand, and the darkness filled with images: Klingon raids on Federation colonies, ships burning in space, refugees fleeing destroyed worlds. The casualty count scrolled past in horrific detail. Thousands dead, tens of thousands displaced, entire populations living in terror. "You could stop this," Q continued. "One use of your gauntlet. Transport every Klingon warship into the sun, or simply remove their warp capability, or rewrite reality so this war never happened. The Time Stone alone could prevent all this suffering, yet you hesitate. Why?" Thanos stared at the carnage, feeling the weight of potential action and deliberate inaction. In his own universe, he'd never allowed such hesitation. The snap had been executed because he believed with absolute certainty it was necessary. But here, that certainty had crumbled. "Because I learned what certainty costs. In my universe, I was so convinced of my righteousness that I never questioned whether my solution was the only answer. I saw overpopulation and resource depletion, and I solved it the only way I could imagine, through reduction. But your Federation has shown me different solutions exist. Replicators eliminate scarcity. Diplomacy resolves conflicts. Cooperation allows diverse species to flourish together. Perhaps if I had sought such complexity instead of simple mathematics." He trailed off, and for the first time since arriving in this universe, true regret colored his features. "The snap would have been unnecessary," Commander Burnham finished softly. "You're realizing you committed genocide when other options existed." "Perhaps," Thanos admitted, the word clearly costing him. "Or perhaps my universe genuinely had no other path, and yours is simply fortunate enough to have evolved differently. I cannot know. And that uncertainty," he looked at Q, "is precisely why I will not use the gauntlet to end your war. Because if I'm wrong, if there exists a diplomatic solution I cannot see, then my intervention would murder thousands unnecessarily." Q's eyes gleamed with something approaching respect. "The Mad Titan has learned doubt. How delightfully human of you."
He snapped his fingers again, and suddenly they stood in Starfleet Command's main briefing room. But not the real one. This was a construct, with Federation admirals, Klingon generals, and Romulan senators all frozen in mid-argument around a holographic star map showing the war's current state. "Here's your test," Q said. "I've brought together representatives from all sides, Federation, Klingon Empire, even the Romulans who are watching this conflict with interest. They're frozen now, but I can unfreeze them. You have one opportunity to speak to them, to use your experience across 1,000 conquered worlds to broker a peace. No violence, no reality warping, just words." "This is a simulation," Thanos observed. "Is it?" Q smiled enigmatically. "Or have I simply plucked them from their respective locations? Doesn't matter. If you can convince them here, I'll make it real. If you fail, well, Section 31 gets their weapon, and we'll see how that works out." Captain Lorca stepped forward. "Q, you can't just—" "Can't I?" Q's expression turned cold, alien, reminding them all that beneath the theatrical exterior lurked something genuinely beyond human comprehension. "I'm offering Thanos a chance to prove his evolution is genuine, that he can solve conflict without snapping his fingers, literally or figuratively. Now be quiet and watch." Q gestured, and the frozen figures animated. The Klingon general, Kal, somehow transported from his destroyed ship, or perhaps this was before that moment, snarled at the Federation admiral across the table. "Your weakness invites conquest. The Empire will not negotiate with prey." The Romulan senator watched with calculating amusement. "Let them destroy each other. We'll claim the ruins." Admiral Cornwell of Starfleet looked exhausted, desperate. "Thousands are dying weekly. We need a ceasefire, a negotiation framework, something." They all stopped as Thanos stepped into their awareness. The sheer physical presence of him, this being who radiated power and ancient authority, silenced the room more effectively than any weapon. "I am Thanos of Titan. I come from a universe where I believed the only solution to conflict was absolute power. I killed trillions, half of all life in my reality, because I was certain it was necessary. And now, standing before you, I carry the same weapon that enabled that atrocity."
He raised the Infinity Gauntlet, and every representative tensed. "I could end your war in seconds, disintegrate every Klingon warship, rewrite reality so this conflict never occurred, force peace through overwhelming dominance." Cole's hand went to his disruptor. Admiral Cornwell's eyes widened with alarm. The Romulan senator leaned forward with interest. "But I will not," Thanos continued. "Because I have learned, am still learning, that such solutions cost more than they save. Power without wisdom creates only ashes, and wisdom begins with recognizing that those who disagree with you are not simply obstacles to overcome, but beings with their own perspectives that might hold truth." He turned to General Cole. "You fight for honor, for Klingon identity against what you see as Federation corruption. I respect that. I, too, fought for my vision of salvation across countless worlds. But tell me, General, when you've conquered the Federation and their weakness is eliminated, what then? Will you turn that conquest inward as empires always do? Will Klingons fight Klingons for dominance until your honor devours itself?" Kal's jaw tightened, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or at least consideration. Thanos turned to Admiral Cornwell. "And you, Admiral, your Federation preaches peace, yet you build warships. You speak of diplomacy while your Section 31 operates in shadows, willing to commit any atrocity if it's necessary. How are we different?" Cornwell opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, the accusation hitting home. Finally, Thanos addressed the Romulan. "And you sit in shadows, waiting to claim ruins. But ruins have no value. The spoils you'd inherit would be poisoned by the hatred that created them. Better to broker peace now and gain the gratitude of both sides than to rule over ashes." He lowered the gauntlet. "I cannot force peace. That was my great error, believing force could solve fundamental problems. But I can offer this. I will remain in this universe for as long as my damaged gauntlet allows. During that time, I will serve as mediator, neutral party, a being powerful enough that neither side can dominate, yet committed to seeking solutions beyond violence." "Why should we trust you?" Cole demanded. "You admit to genocide." "Because," Thanos said simply, "I'm trying to be better than what I was. And perhaps in helping you find peace, I can find redemption for what I've done. Or perhaps I cannot, but the attempt matters." Silence filled the briefing room. Then Admiral Cornwell spoke carefully. "What you're proposing, it would require Klingon Empire agreement, Romulan non-interference, and Starfleet authorization at the highest levels." "It would also require," Cole said slowly, "that this Titan prove his neutrality, that he doesn't simply become another Federation asset." The Romulan senator smiled coldly. "And it would require transparency. If he serves as mediator, the Tal Shiar will want guarantees he cannot manipulate outcomes through his weapon." Q watched all this with undisguised delight, but said nothing. The test continued. Thanos nodded. "I accept those terms. My gauntlet will be monitored by Federation science, by Klingon honor, by Romulan calculation. I will use it only for self-defense or by unanimous agreement of all parties, and I will advocate for solutions that preserve life, not destroy it." Commander Burnham stepped forward. "Captain Lorca and I will serve as Starfleet liaisons, will ensure transparency and report any violations directly to command." "And I," announced a new voice, "will provide oversight." Reality twisted, and suddenly they were back on Discovery's breach, the Section 31 fleet still frozen outside. But the diplomatic meeting hadn't been a simulation. Q had actually transported those representatives, and they now stood in Discovery's briefing room via holographic communication, their expressions showing shock at the transition, but accepting the reality of what had just occurred. Q had unfrozen time, and with it, potential. "The Continuum finds this experiment acceptable," Q said, his usual mockery absent. "Thanos of Titan, you've passed the test. You've learned that power without wisdom is merely destruction. Now prove you can maintain that wisdom under pressure." He vanished, leaving only his parting words echoing. "Don't disappoint me, Titan. I have such high hopes for your redemption arc." Operative Leyland's voice crackled over the comm. "What just happened? Discovery, respond." Captain Lorca looked at Thanos, then at the holographic representatives still processing Q's casual manipulation of reality. A peace negotiation had begun, not through force, not through Section 31's black operations, but through the most unlikely mediator imaginable. "Operative Leyland," Lorca said carefully, "I suggest you inform your superiors that Thanos has been assigned a diplomatic role by multiple governments simultaneously, and that Q is watching, so perhaps stand down before you create an interdimensional incident." The Section 31 vessels hesitated, then slowly powered down weapons. Leyland's image showed barely controlled frustration, but he was professional enough to recognize when a situation had escaped his operational parameters. Thanos stood at the center of Discovery's breach, the Infinity Gauntlet pulsing with damaged but still formidable power, surrounded by beings who had every reason to fear or hate him. Yet they were choosing to trust, not blindly, but with cautious hope that perhaps even the Mad Titan could change. "We begin negotiations tomorrow," Admiral Cornwell said via holographic communication. "Starbase 1, all parties will attend. And Thanos, if you betray this trust, the consequences will be absolute." "I understand," Thanos replied, "and I accept those consequences. I have carried the burden of my choices before. I can carry them again." The holographic representatives faded. The Section 31 fleet withdrew. The immediate crisis passed. But in the shadows of the galaxy, forces were already moving. The Borg had detected the Infinity Stone's unique energy signature. The Dominion in the Gamma Quadrant had recorded subspace distortions, and in the Delta Quadrant, Species 8472 sensed a weapon that could threaten even their fluidic space. The Mad Titan's greatest challenge was only beginning. Starbase 1 hung in the darkness like a monument to Federation ambition. A massive orbital facility that served as Starfleet's primary headquarters, diplomatic nexus, and symbol of humanity's reach among the stars. Its gleaming corridors had witnessed the birth of treaties, the planning of deep space missions, and now the most unlikely peace negotiation in Federation history. In the main conference hall, representatives from 3 interstellar powers sat around a circular table designed to eliminate hierarchical positioning. Admiral Katrina Cornwell represented the Federation, her face lined with the exhaustion of a war she'd never wanted to fight. General Cole sat across from her, the Klingon warrior's scarred features radiating barely controlled aggression even in this diplomatic setting. Between them, the Romulan Senator Vreenok watched with the calculating patience of a species that had mastered political manipulation across centuries. And at the center, standing rather than sitting because no chair could accommodate his massive frame, stood Thanos of Titan. The Infinity Gauntlet rested on his left hand, now enclosed in a transparent containment field designed by the Federation's best scientists, not to restrain it, but to monitor its energy output and ensure transparency. The field pulsed softly, displaying real-time readings that all parties could observe. Every fluctuation, every surge of power, visible to all. It had been 3 days since the negotiations began. 3 days of philosophical debate, territorial disputes, and the slow, grinding work of transforming centuries of mistrust into tentative cooperation. Commander Burnham stood along the wall with other observers, watching Thanos navigate cultural minefields with the same strategic brilliance he'd once applied to conquest. "The colony world of Donatu 5, Thanos said, gesturing to the holographic star map floating above the table. "Both Federation and Klingon Empire claim it. Both have historical precedent. Both have spilled blood for it." He looked between Cornwell and Cole. "This is where utilitarian calculus fails. No amount of mathematics can determine whose claim is more valid when both parties believe absolutely in their righteousness. Then we fight for it," Cole declared, his hand slapping the table. "As we have always fought, the strong claim what they can hold." "And how many must die before one side proves stronger?" Thanos asked quietly. "I have conquered 1,000 worlds, General. I have seen this pattern repeated endlessly. The strong take, the weak resist. Both sides bleed until one can bleed no more. Then the cycle begins again when the defeated grow strong enough for revenge. He leaned forward, his ancient eyes holding Cole's fierce gaze. I offer you something rarer than victory. I offer you the end of cycles. Admiral Cornwell seized the opening. Joint administration. The colony remains neutral, neither federation nor empire, but protected by both. A demonstration that cooperation serves better than conquest. Weakness. The empire does not share. No, Thanos said, his voice carrying unexpected understanding. The empire takes. I respect that philosophy. I lived it for decades. But tell me, General, how many warriors has the Empire lost in this war? How many ships? How much honor spilled into the void for contested rocks circling distant stars? Cole's jaw worked, anger and calculation warring across his features. Thanos pressed the advantage. True strength is knowing when conquest costs more than it gains. The Federation calls it wisdom. Klingons call it strategy. The word matters less than the truth. This war bleeds both sides while achieving nothing but stalemate. Joint administration of Donatu 5 proves the Empire is strong enough to secure peace, not merely capable of waging war. Senator Vrenock spoke for the first time in hours, his Romulan accent carrying sardonic amusement. The mad Titan makes an adequate diplomat. Who would have imagined? He steepled his fingers, his calculating gaze fixed on Thanos. But joint administration requires trust, and trust requires verification. The Tal Shiar will demand monitoring stations on Donatu 5, as will, I suspect, Starfleet intelligence and Klingon defense forces. Agreed, Thanos said immediately. Transparency serves all parties. The moment any faction acts in secret is the moment this peace dies. You speak of transparency, Cole challenged, yet you carry a weapon that violates the laws of nature itself. The Infinity Gauntlet could erase this station with a thought. Why should we trust you? You won't use it to enforce your will. It was the question that had hung over every session. Thanos looked down at the gauntlet, at the 6 stones pulsing within their containment field. The reality stone's crack had widened further. Soon it would shatter completely. The time stone flickered erratically, its control over temporal flow compromised by this universe's different physics. Even the Power Stone, the most reliable of the 6, surged unpredictably. Because, Thanos said softly, I am dying. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background hum of the Starbase's system seemed to pause. Commander Burnham felt her heart lurch. She'd suspected the Gauntlet's instability was affecting Thanos, but hearing him confirm it carried different weight. The Infinity Stones reject this universe, Thanos continued, raising his gauntleted hand so all could see the monitoring data more clearly. The Reality Stone will shatter within days, the Time Stone soon after. When the cascade completes, the resulting quantum detonation will destroy everything within 3 light years. He looked around the table, including me, including this station, including any hope for the peace we're building. Then remove the stones, Cornwell urged. Our scientists can contain them separately, prevent the cascade. No. Thanos' voice carried absolute finality. The stones are bound to me through the Gauntlet's matrix. Removing them now would trigger immediate detonation. The only solution is to send me and them back to my own universe before the cascade completes. Can that be done? Cole demanded. "The rift that brought you here sealed itself." "I've been working with your scientists," Thanos said, nodding to where Lieutenant Commander Stamets stood with a team of Federation researchers. "The mycelial network Discovery uses. It connects all points in space simultaneously. We believe it might also connect to parallel realities, to other universal quantum structures."
"How long?" Senator Vreenak asked. "The calculations suggest 48 hours before the Gauntlet reaches critical cascade," Stamets replied. "We need at least 36 hours to prepare Discovery's spore drive for interdimensional transit. That leaves us a 12-hour window, maybe." "Then we have 2 days to finalize a peace treaty that ends a war spanning years," Admiral Cornwell said, the weight of it evident in her voice. "And if we fail, Thanos dies here, taking this station and any hope for peace with him." "No pressure," Thanos said, and despite everything, the war, the danger, the impossible stakes, there was something almost resembling humor in his tone. Commander Burnham realized she was witnessing something extraordinary, the Mad Titan learning not just wisdom, but humanity. The next 36 hours blurred together in a frenzy of diplomatic negotiation and scientific preparation. In the conference hall, Thanos mediated disputes with the patience of someone who had nothing left to lose. When Klingon honor demanded blood satisfaction for a border incident, he proposed ritualized combat with non-lethal weapons, violence channeled into ceremony rather than warfare. When Federation principles clashed with Klingon pragmatism over prisoner treatment, he found common ground in mutual respect for worthy adversaries. Slowly, impossibly, a framework emerged. The Khitomer Accords, they would be called, named for a Klingon colony that symbolized the possibility of peaceful coexistence. Not a surrender, not a victory, simply an acknowledgement that both sides could achieve more through cooperation than through continued bloodshed. Senator Vreenak signed on behalf of the Romulan Star Empire, his people agreeing to respect the neutral zones established by the treaty. Cole affixed his house seal with a warrior's grunt of acceptance. Admiral Cornwell added Starfleet's authorization with hands that trembled from relief and exhaustion. But while diplomacy unfolded in the conference hall, something darker stirred in the depths of space. The Borg had been watching. The collective's interest in the Infinity Stones was absolute. Such technology represented the ultimate assimilation, the addition of reality manipulation to the hive mind's capabilities. And now that the stone's location was confirmed, a Borg cube had altered course towards Starbase 1. "Proximity alert!" The warning screamed through Discovery's bridge as Captain Lorca and his crew prepared the spore drive for Thanos' return journey. "Borg cube emerging from transwarp conduit, distance 4 light-years and closing." Commander Saru's threat ganglia extended fully. "Captain, at their current velocity, they'll reach us in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours. The Gauntlet would reach critical cascade in 8. Lorca's tactical mind raced through scenarios, discarding each as impossible. "We can't fight a Borg cube. Even with the treaty fleet assembled here, we'd be overwhelmed. And we can't evacuate. There are 10,000 personnel on this starbase." On the starbase, alarms began wailing as Starfleet detected the Borg approach. The conference hall erupted into controlled chaos, officers running to stations, delegates demanding explanations, the fragile peace threatening to shatter under the weight of existential terror. Thanos stood in the center of it all, perfectly calm. He'd faced the armies of multiple worlds, had stared down cosmic entities, had willingly borne the burden of the universe's hatred. One Borg cube did not frighten him. "The Borg seek assimilation," he said, his voice cutting through the panic. "They want the Infinity Stones added to their collective.
They believe such power would make them unstoppable. "They're right," Cole said grimly. The Klingon warrior's hand rested on his disruptor, though they all knew weapons would be useless against Borg adaptation. "Then we must ensure they don't acquire the Gauntlet," Thanos said simply. He turned to Stamets. "How long until the spore drive is ready?" 4 hours at minimum. We need to recalibrate the mycelial matrix for interdimensional transit, and the calculations are incredibly complex. "I have 3 hours, because in 3 hours, I'm taking Discovery to meet that cube, and I'm ending this." "Ending what?" Admiral Cornwell demanded. "Thanos, the Borg cannot be reasoned with. They don't negotiate. They assimilate or destroy. There is no middle ground." "I know," Thanos said quietly. He raised the Infinity Gauntlet, and despite its damaged state, despite the monitoring field, despite everything, it blazed with terrible power. "You negotiate when you have something to offer. I intend to make them an offer. They can't refuse." Understanding crashed over the assembled delegates like a wave. Commander Burnham stepped forward, horror and admiration warring in her expression. "You're going to detonate the Gauntlet deliberately. Use the cascade as a weapon against the Borg." "The explosion will destroy the cube and everything within 3 light-years, including me." "But Discovery can use the spore drive to escape at the last moment. The starbase will be safe, the treaty will hold, and the Borg will learn that some weapons cannot be taken." "That's suicide," Cole said bluntly. Then, with grudging respect, "A warrior's death. There is honor in such sacrifice." "There is necessity in it," Thanos corrected. "I have lived my entire existence making the choices no one else would make, bearing the burdens others could not. This is simply the final calculation, my life against the safety of this fragile piece." Admiral Cornwell shook her head. "There has to be another way. We can evacuate the starbase, move it out of range."
"There isn't time," Thanos said gently. "And you know it, Admiral. The mathematics are clear. This is the optimal solution." He looked around at the faces surrounding him. Federation, Klingon, Romulan, all united in this moment by something he'd never expected to inspire: genuine concern for his survival. "In my universe," he said softly, "I was hated, feared, reviled as a monster who murdered half of everything. And perhaps I was, perhaps I still am. But here, in these days spent mediating your peace, I've learned something unexpected, that redemption might be possible, not through more killing, but through choosing to die so others might live." Senator Vreenak spoke, his Romulan pragmatism tinged with something almost like sadness. The mad Titan has learned mercy at last. How typically human to find it only when facing death. Perhaps, Thanos agreed, or perhaps mercy was always there, buried beneath certainty and conviction. Your Federation showed me doubt. Doubt led to wisdom, and wisdom led to this moment. He looked at Commander Burnham. "You asked me once if murdering half the universe was really balance. I said it was mercy. I was wrong. This, sacrificing myself so others might have the chance at peace, this is mercy." 3 hours later, Discovery undocked from Starbase 1 and set course directly toward the approaching Borg cube. The Treaty Fleet, Federation, Klingon, and even 3 Romulan warbirds took up escort positions, though all knew they were merely witnessing, not participating in what came next. Thanos stood on Discovery's bridge, the Infinity Gauntlet blazing with unstable power. The Reality Stone's crack had spread across half its surface. The Time Stone flickered like a dying star. All 6 stones surged in chaotic harmony, reality itself groaning under the weight of their imminent failure. "Borg cube within visual range," Lieutenant Detmer reported. On the view screen it appeared, a massive geometric nightmare, its surface crawling with technological horror, green light pulsing from its heart.
"They're hailing us," Commander Ariam said. "Audio only." The voice of the collective echoed through the bridge. Thousands speaking as one, utterly devoid of individuality or mercy. "We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile." Thanos smiled, a terrible, knowing expression. "I am Thanos of Titan. I have murdered trillions. I have wielded power that rewrote reality itself. I have borne the universe's hatred and emerged unchanged. And I tell you now, resistance is never futile when someone is willing to pay the price." The Power Stone detonated first, releasing energy equivalent to a dozen supernovas in concentrated burst. The Reality Stone shattered, tearing holes between dimensions. The Time Stone collapsed, creating temporal paradoxes that made the Borg Cube exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. The Space Stone inverted, crushing distance into singularity. The Mind Stone fractured, unleashing psychic energy that overwhelmed even the collective's hive consciousness. And the Soul Stone, last to fail, released the essence of the trillions Thanos had killed, their final judgment upon him. In that microsecond before annihilation, Thanos felt them all. Every being whose life he'd ended in the snap, their voices united not in hatred, but in acceptance. They showed him what he'd denied for so long, that his solution had been wrong, that other paths existed, that mercy meant preservation rather than destruction. And in that final moment, Thanos of Titan understood true balance. "Now, Stamets," Commander Lorca commanded. The spore drive engaged, Discovery phased into the mycelial network, escaping through quantum dimensions as the Gauntlet cascade reached critical mass. Behind them, the Borg Cube vanished in light that temporarily made the surrounding space brighter than any star. When Discovery emerged 30 seconds later, 5 light-years away, the view screen showed only an expanding cloud of exotic particles where both the Borg and Thanos had been. Silence filled the bridge. Then Commander Burnham spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Captain's log supplemental. Thanos of Titan gave his life to protect the peace he helped create. History will debate whether his sacrifice redeems his genocide, but in his final act, he chose preservation over destruction. He chose others over himself. He chose mercy." Admiral Cornwell's voice came over the comm from Starbase 1. "The treaty holds. Federation, Klingon Empire, and even Romulan Star Empire have agreed to honor the Khitomer Accords. The war is over." The war was over. Peace had been purchased with the sacrifice of someone who'd spent his existence believing peace required sacrifice. The poetry of it was not lost on anyone present. In the weeks that followed, historians and philosophers would argue endlessly about Thanos' legacy. Some called him a monster who found redemption too late. Others argued his final sacrifice proved that even the worst among us can change. The debate would continue across generations, across species, across the expanding Federation. But on Discovery's bridge, as they set course back to Starbase 1, Commander Michael Burnham thought about the Mad Titan's last words to her, spoken privately before he'd boarded the ship for his final mission. "Tell them," he had said, "that balance is not about reducing life, but about understanding its value. Tell them that mercy is not weakness, but the hardest strength. And tell them that even someone who has done me unforgivable can still choose, in the end, to do what's right." She would tell them. She would make sure the Federation remembered not just the genocide he'd committed, but the growth he'd achieved, the doubt he'd learned, the wisdom he'd found. Because if the Mad Titan could change, could learn, could choose sacrifice over survival, then perhaps there was hope for all beings to transcend their worst impulses, to evolve beyond violence, to seek balance not through destruction, but through understanding. It was, Commander Burnham realized, the most Federation principle imaginable. Infinite diversity in infinite combinations, now including even a tyrant from another universe who'd learned mercy at the cost of everything. The stars stretched endlessly before them,
full of infinite possibility. And somewhere in the mycelial network, connecting all points across all realities, perhaps a fragment of Thanos' consciousness still existed, not as the Mad Titan, but as something gentler, something wiser, something at peace.
In the months following Thanos' sacrifice, the Khitomer Accords transformed the political landscape of the Alpha and Beta Quadrants. The peace held, not because it was perfect, but because it was possible. Federation diplomats worked alongside Klingon warriors to establish joint colonies. Romulan scientists cautiously shared research with Starfleet. The war that had threatened to consume everything ended not with victory, but with recognition that cooperation served better than conquest. Starfleet Academy added a new course to its curriculum, Applied Ethics in Impossible Scenarios, using Thanos' journey as its central case study. Students debated whether his final sacrifice redeemed his genocide, whether power without wisdom inevitably led to tyranny, whether certainty was more dangerous than doubt. There were no correct answers, only better questions. The Discovery continued its missions, carrying the memory of the Mad Titan who'd learned mercy. Commander Burnham kept a recording of his final words, playing it whenever she faced impossible choices. Captain Lorca, who understood better than most what it meant to make dark decisions for supposedly righteous causes, ordered a memorial plaque installed in Discovery's observation deck, in memory of Thanos of Titan, who taught us that even monsters can choose heroism when wisdom replaces certainty. And sometimes, late at night, when Stamets navigated the mycelial network, he swore he could sense something, not quite consciousness, not quite presence, but an echo, a fragment of will that had chosen preservation over destruction, understanding over power, sacrifice over survival. Perhaps it was imagination. Perhaps it was the network's infinite complexity manifesting patterns that resembled intention. Or perhaps, in that space between realities where all possibilities exist simultaneously, the Mad Titan had finally found his balance. The Federation would continue exploring. The Klingons would continue seeking honor. The universe would spin on, full of conflicts and cooperations, tragedies and triumphs. But they would all carry forward the lesson that Thanos had purchased with his life, that the ends do not justify all means, that power demands wisdom, and that mercy, true mercy, means valuing life enough to sacrifice your own when necessary. To boldly go where no one has gone before required more than ships and courage. It required the wisdom to know when certainty became tyranny, when strength became cruelty, when the pursuit of balance destroyed the very thing it sought to preserve. Thanos of Titan had learned that lesson, and in learning it, he'd given the galaxy something more valuable than peace. He'd given them hope that redemption was always possible, that growth never ended, that even the worst among us could choose, in the end, to be better. The stars awaited, and infinite diversity continued, enriched by the sacrifice of someone who'd finally understood what balance truly meant. To boldly go where no one has gone before. More stories await.